Welcome to this new automotive news video for Friday, March 13th, 2026. Today we'll discuss Stellantis' plans to sell some brands to Chinese manufacturers and review the full story. We'll also cover the recent drop in electric car prices, and it's not necessarily for the reason you might think. We'll also talk about Jeep, which is announcing price cuts for its electric models, and we'll talk about Volkswagen, which is updating its ID. 3, and by the way, has changed its name. These will be the topics of this video for March 13, 2026. I hope you'll find them interesting. If that's the case, as usual, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for future videos, and boosting this one. If you see the option, that's the best way to support my channel for free. Also, leave a comment with your thoughts on today's news, especially regarding the Stellantis group brands. Which do you think will be the first brands to become more or less Chinese? All right, let's start by talking about the big automotive news of the day. Because that's it. Some saw it coming, others were hoping for it, even thinking it would give things a little kick in the butt. Chinese brands are starting to take an interest in the Stellantis group brands, which are European brands. Indeed, Stellantis is currently in negotiations with several of them, including XPeng and Xiaomi, to develop a new partnership that would be both financial and strategic. What Stellantis wants is to bring these two Chinese brands into the capital of some of the brands it owns, in exchange for part of their expertise. This is especially true when it comes to electric cars and, more generally, the electrification of automobiles. Basically, Stellantis wants to sell part of these brands in exchange for the Chinese know-how. Everything related to batteries, electric motors, and all the software and electronic management of the embedded systems in these well-known cars. The goal for Stellantis is to try to catch up a bit on the delay they've had in developing electric cars. Even though, for now, they don't really believe in electric vehicles very clearly, they've shifted back toward the market for combustion engine and hybrid cars. It even cost them $22 billion in 2025. Stellantis doesn't really believe in it, but they know that right now they still have to sell some to avoid CO2 fines. And they also know that if one day the market completely shifts to electric cars, they still have to keep developing those technologies. Except they're a bit behind on that. You just have to look at the price, the range, the various problems that have come up with Stellantis Group's electric cars, their current cars, to realize that, clearly, it's not up to par compared to what the competition is doing, even French competitors like Renault. You might wonder what Chinese brands gain from buying European brands, which aren't doing well in Europe's market. It's much less vibrant than a few years ago, and it's true that for most European mainstream brands, sales aren't doing well. That's where the European Commission steps in. We discussed it in a video a few months ago. The European Commission wants to change the tax system on Chinese cars sold in Europe and replace it with a mandatory minimum price system. And above all, it wants Chinese brands that set up in Europe to do so through joint ventures with European brands, just like it's done the other way around in China. When Peugeot wants to sell cars, it doesn't do it under the name Peugeot, but through a joint venture called Peugeot Dongfeng, which it created with the Chinese brand Dongfeng. The European Commission wants to impose reciprocity for this process, and therefore require brands like, for example, Xiaomi or XPeng that are setting up in Europe, who might want to build battery factories or car factories there by partnering with established European brands like Xiaomi Peugeot or Xperia Peugeot Citroën, for example. This is just one example. It may not actually happen that way. Chinese companies like Xiaomi and XPeng will eventually have to partner with established European brands to sell cars in Europe. And they are taking the lead, which would also benefit Stellantis, as they could at the same time gain some of their expertise and therefore make up for part of their delay. For now, we don't know exactly which brands would be involved. We do know that within the Stellantis group, the American brands are safe, in quotes, from the Chinese threat. Since the American brands Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and even Chrysler are brands that hardly sell in Europe. They are only sold in the United States. In the United States, Chinese brands are nearly entirely banned. Cars with a certain amount of Chinese components or software can't be sold there. So this only concerns European brands, like, for example, Peugeot, Alfa, Fiat, Opel. We don't know which ones yet, but one brand keeps coming up in discussions between Stellantis and its Chinese brands. This was revealed by Reuters and Bloomberg. It's actually Maserati. And indeed, Maserati becoming Chinese wouldn't be the most surprising thing, because Maserati is becoming the ball and chain for Stellantis that the group can't save. Quite simply, I made a dedicated video about Maserati, which I invite you to watch to really understand the extent of the damage. But it's a brand that's very difficult to save because the only thing that could save this brand is major technological investments, especially in engines. Ever since the V8S disappeared from Maserati, sales have risen and then collapsed. Because customers don't want to spend 200 or 300,000 euros on a car that has a V6. A V6 is nice, but it's nice on a beautiful sedan or on an entry-level sports car. When you start spending that kind of money, you want more than just a V6. Stellantis no longer has any big engines available. Developing one just for Europe wouldn't be profitable for them, because it would likely cost hundreds of millions of euros for a niche brand whose sales could never justify such an investment. And on top of that, since the future of combustion engines is completely uncertain, Stellantis doesn't even know if they could sell that engine for 3, 4, 5, or 10 years. So yes, there is the V8 My American Friend, which is in their lineup, but the problem is that it's already very heavy. It's not at all an engine designed to be put in a sports car of this size. And on top of that, the CO2 emissions from this engine are enormous. Since Stellantis likely already owes hundreds of millions of euros in CO2 fines in Europe, this would just further increase that amount. So it wouldn't be surprising to learn that Stellantis is trying to find a buyer for Maserati, just to get a few million euros out of it before the possible end of the brand. This would let its electric models be updated, as they currently have poor range and power, especially compared to a Tesla that costs much less. And we can imagine that Chinese industrial groups would be particularly pleased to start buying up brands that are quite symbolic of European luxury. Maserati may not be Porsche or Ferrari, but it's still nice. Well, for now, this partnership is still being negotiated. We'll probably know fairly soon, likely around May 2026, which brand this partnership will involve. I also wanted to share some good news with you, since apparently that's it, the price of electric cars is starting to go down. Indeed, in 2025, their average price will have dropped by about 1,800 euros. That's a 4% decrease, with the average price still remaining around 42,700 euros. Compared to 35,300 euros for a combustion engine model, there's still a 7,000 euro difference, which is often offset by bonuses, and also on the side of combustion engine cars. Interestingly enough, the main reason for this decrease is not at all that the brands suddenly decided to cut their margins, even though some brands increased their promotions at the end of the year just to clear out some of their stock. What really brought this price down was the arrival of new, smaller electric models, especially those in the B segment. A whole bunch of new city cars that simply didn't exist in 2024. According to this study, these models alone led to a decrease of about 13% in the prices of their category. The overall average. Yes, electric car prices have dropped in France and Europe, but this is because of new, cheaper models, not because existing models got cheaper. But overall, it's still good news, since those who really wanted to switch to electric cars can now do so with smaller models. And by the way, speaking of price reductions on electric models, Jeep, a brand from the Stellantis group, has just announced a price cut of 3,500 euros on its electric Avenger, which still isn't exactly cheap. Its starting price is still 33,000 euros with a claimed range of 400 kilometers WLTP. But hey, that's still 3,500 euros less than before, while keeping absolutely all the standard equipment it included up until now, like a 10-inch touchscreen automatic climate control, and rear parking sensors, and the 11-kilowatt three-phase charger that's included as standard, allowing you to recharge the battery in just 6 hours. And finally, let's talk about Volkswagen, which is announcing the successor to the ID.3, the brand's small electric compact. The ID.3 will no longer be called ID.3, but ID.3 Neo. The previous one was launched considering the speed at which electric cars are evolving. 7 years is a very, very long time. Already, it's going to benefit from an almost complete facelift. So, for now, there are no photos of this ID.3 Neo, only sketches officially released by Volkswagen. And the good news is that overall, it's a bit less ugly than the previous generation of the ID.3. This time, Volkswagen is going for a slightly more conventional design, with redesigned front lights, a slightly lower grille, and air intakes that have changed shape. And most importantly, at the back, they've removed the big, ugly black strip so that the entire rear of the vehicle is now a single color. The rear lights will keep the same shape, but they should get an updated light signature, so it's not just a cosmetic makeover. It's also an opportunity for Volkswagen to add several new software features to its ID.3. For example, one-pedal driving, which is a driving mode where the driver can control almost the entire car with just one pedal, the accelerator. When it's released, the car recovers energy and slows down to a complete stop. This is a feature that has become common on most modern electric vehicles, but the older ID.3, which was an earlier model, didn't offer it. It will also benefit from an improved travel assist, which can now detect traffic lights from a distance and adjust the vehicle's speed in anticipation of a red or yellow light. And then, another important development, it will include a V2L function. The V2L. It's clearly about using your electric car as a battery to charge another device, like an electric bike, a laptop, or a raclette machine. It's also an opportunity for Volkswagen to introduce a new digital key system that the driver can use to start their car with their smartwatch or smartphone. And I've saved the best for last. The real good news in all this is that it's goodbye to the touch controls on the steering wheel in this car, notably with the return of traditional physical buttons, which don't break down and are more intuitive. For now, we don't know how much it will cost, or if there will be any changes to the battery, but you can count on me to keep you updated on the news about this topic. That's it for today's news. I hope you found the video interesting. As usual, feel free to show it by liking, subscribing, and becoming a supporter with the join button. See you tomorrow for the next one. Bye.